And look, we don't have anything useful. 1 second. Oh my. We have serious disconnects here. Ta-da, we're back. This is the kind of morning it's been. Good morning. Welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips, the Monday with a capital M edition. I am your host, Anne, and we also have disembodied hands named Quindy, John, and even Justin on occasion somewhere out in the ether. Who knows? Yeah, that's pretty much it, Crowley. That's what I was thinking. we didn't have an NES. We had something else, but yes, same kind of thing. Obviously, too much dust got caught up in the vents, and or something like that. My computer has been all morning, and then I forgot to reset my my intro. So yeah, it's that kind of day, guys. It's that kind of day. But look, we have a mini, a new mini, relatively new mini, which we were working on the skin for, and we were using a combination of Griffin Golden Brown and tan skin for this one because I wanted her to have a bit of a darker skin tone. And I have not, I think you guys wanted silver hair. So, because I was thinking celestial. I'm kind of feeling like I might go purple and teal on this one just to mix it up. As I pointed out the other day, we've been doing a lot of red, yellow, blue color schemes, albeit lots of different variants on that theme. I haven't painted something teal and purple in an eon. So I'm kind of feeling like purple and teal might be the way to go here. It's what my mood. I has a mood. An old school Jennifer Haley kind of mood. Let's see here. That said, I do want to introduce some rosy tones into her face and do a little bit more highlighting. That. Ah, dear. But yes, it's been that kind of day. You can get behind purple and teal. Go old school. Old school mini painting traditional. Still an underestimated color scheme. I'm going to just build my base skin tone really quick because we work. Everything else gets worked off of the base skin tone. So I'm doing 3 drops of each. 3 drops of tan skin and Griffin Golden Brown. It's because I wanted to make her a slightly darker skinned mage. Somebody who's been out in the elements a bit. Yeah, I figured. Well, people asked for silver hair, and I wanted to make her very celestial-like, so I can still do celestial with purple and teal. Do lots of gold and silver. Alrighty, so we've got kind of our brown skin tone, and I'm actually going to build a few other things today with this. I want to build a cooler shadow. I want to build a warmer highlight, and I want to build a blush color. So for our shadow, we'll just go over here. Ask yourself what the complementary color of this is, and usually that's going to be a bit of a blue-green, although this is a very yellow skin tone, so I almost want a purple blue because there's really no red in this. Like it's got a tiny bit of red in it. Oops, missed my base. But it doesn't have a lot. So I'm kind of feeling like maybe an indigo might be the way to go. So let's see here. I've got Night Sky Indigo, but it's got black in it, and I don't want to necessarily throw some black into this. So I may have to do a quick mix. So when you want to mute out a skin tone and make it cooler, but you don't want to make it ashy or gray, which you definitely don't want to do with skin tones in general unless you're working dark elf or something, mix in some of the complementary colors. So here I'm working with the fact this is a very yellowy skin tone, so I'm going to use a tiny bit of runic purple. And I'm going to add a little bit of cyan blue, which is very, very powerful, cyan blue is, and so it will overwhelm the purple if I put too much in. But there we go. So let's just start with 2 stripes of that. And I'm actually going to just take my brush full of paint and mix it in to make kind of a muted indigo color. That's actually perfect. So now what I want to do if I'm building a shadow is I want to add just a little bit. Now, when you are building a shadow, usually you want to have your color be a little darker than the color you're mixing it into. But that doesn't necessarily have to follow, because often when you mix two complements together, they turn darker. Like if you try to mix a green and a red together, the red will immediately go much darker. You can use green to darken red. So you can use this purple and blue to darken our main skin tone. And here's where we're going to see if this color is really what we want. See how that darkened it? And it also made it cooler, but it's not gray or anything. And that's important. That's why I used colors that did not have any black in them. So I want to see. Now, if you see the color shift like in a weird way, like toward green, that means that essentially you need more red, more purple. So like if I had chosen to do a blue-green, like a teal to add into this, I would have right away seen it go green because there's not a lot of red in here to counteract it. So you're always working with complementary colors. If like this shifted to blue, I should add more orange. If this shifted green, I should add red. What you're trying to do is get a more muted and darker version of your skin tone to use as a shadow. And this is much cooler now. You can see I've essentially mixed a brown that's cooler, but not gray, in order to introduce some more realistic shadows. And I'm going to add some water to keep this color around, just in case I need it a little longer. I mixed a very small amount of it, because I only need a very small amount of it. I could try to darken it further, but I kind of like it there. I'm just going to kind of mix this stuff together. Don't really care if I'm like, you can see as I mix the skin tone into this, it gets more grayed out. And the other one, and it takes this darker. So I still want it to be a skin tone. I just want it to be a little cooler and darker to have it be a shadow. I did start, for those keeping score at home, I did start with my ostensible shadow for the skin tone, but this is really warm. It's fairly bright. And shadows wouldn't necessarily have that. Now I did glaze down the neck of the figure to get her skin cooler, but that was part of what determined that I wanted to do this, is that I wanted to cool down some areas. And the underside of the arm. And this is going to be fairly subtle. It'll be more evident if you use this kind of technique on a larger area, like a bust or a 75mm figure. I also thinned this way down so it's not too crazy and overbearing. Now, one thing we are trying to do with this, if you all remember me talking about 3-zone faces the other day, is remember that even on women, it's much easier to do it on men because you can suggest the 5 o'clock shadow. But the lower part of the face tends to be cooler, the middle part of the face tends to be more red, and the upper part of the face tends to be warmer and a bit more yellow because it's up against the forehead, it's up against the bone, the skull. So that means you don't have a lot of blood flow like you do through here. The fleshy parts of the face have more blood flow, so they tend to be more reddish. So essentially here I've glazed over her jawline, and you can see that that hint of blue. It's taken it down. I'm not touching the chin for the most part because light is falling there, but I definitely painted it over the neck and over that. Any other area in shadow, like the back of the hand, is going to get this color. And one of the things it does is just to give you a bit more interesting of a shadow, and the other thing it does is to give you more realistic shadow. Especially because we're going to be painting her in purple and teal, so we're painting her in cooler colors. So any reflected light we get is probably going to be along these lines. That's another thing you can use to inform your decision on what you use for this, is if the character's all in blue, then you definitely do want to mix some blue into your shadows, if it's going to be bouncing back up at the skin tone. These are these little things that you can think of to tweak your work. And like I said, on a 28, this is probably overkill, but I wanted to do it anyway, just to show you what can be done. Introduce you to these concepts so that when you do work on a bigger figure, especially nowadays with so many of you guys having 3D printers where you can print out a thing at whatever size you want. Hello, lady. Yeah, I looked yesterday, Crows. He is now the highest grossing Kickstarter of all time. I think he passed it around 23 or 24. Like that smartwatch thing was the previous the thing that was running around the time of Bones 1 was the previous highest scorer, so he has destroyed it. I read an interview with him in the New York Times yesterday where he kind of laid out his reasons why he thinks that this isn't a game changer for most authors. And he's kind of right. He's like, most authors aren't interested in the business side. They just want to write books. They wouldn't want to do all of the business work that I have to do to make this work. But he also talked about how he kind of wanted to do this to show that there were viable options to launch books that didn't involve Amazon. So it was an interesting interview. But yeah, and the funny thing is that if you look, he rewrote his intro to the Kickstarter, which happens when you launch what you imagine is going to be a Kickstarter for your fans, and then the fact that the Kickstarter goes bazonkers gets you all sorts of people that never heard of you before. That happened with Reaper. The first couple of Kickstarters, especially, people came in who had never heard of Reaper, but they were attracted by the fact that we were at that point a record-breaking Kickstarter. And it's just a fun social media experience at that point to watch it go up and be a part of the community. And so we ended up, Brandon will come out of this having a whole new community of readers that he didn't have before. And it will have been worth it for that, if nothing else. He's now going to have a whole new audience for his books. Just like Reaper gained a lot of new fans with those Kickstarters. People who had never picked up a miniature before came to look at it and went, what's this? And they got introduced to the hobby. And then you guys are such a great and friendly community that a lot of them stayed, right? So I said after the first one, maybe after the second one, I'm like, the thing is, this is no longer like entirely a fundraiser. It's a social media event. It has the ability to draw a new audience. So Kickstarter is a very interesting phenomenon. Now I'm going to actually also do a cooler shadow on the other side of the face because I have the color. And I'm going to cool that down. I want the light mostly from here. I'll bring in a little light on the back, but yeah. All right, so now I want to bring in some red tones because I've definitely brought in, you can see the cool color on the underside of the arm here. See it? It just makes things a little bit more interesting. And if you're worried that you've gone too blue, don't be. Because the minute we start painting with teal and purple, those colors are going to be so much more vibrant than this subtle little shadow. It's going to completely fall into line and just look like a shadow in the skin. So, but yeah, there's also a lot of sour grapes people out there like bashing Brandon. Or bashing his backers for giving all this money. Because they're like, there are lots of other worthy authors out there. And it's like, dudes, where did you miss the fact that this is people like who honestly want to just see more Brandon stuff? I hate the sour grape stuff. It's like when you bash somebody who is doing well, it just doesn't, it's not a good look. It's not a good look. Alrighty, so let's see here. I'm going to put her down for a second while I mix up some new stuff. I'm going to use my block rester. Haha. There. Let's talk about building some blush and highlights. Yeah, worthy is highly subjective. I mixed two colors in Ara because I wanted an indigo and I didn't have rich indigo to hand. So I mixed runic purple and cyan blue. Cyan blue is essentially what I use for a primary blue. Runic purple is not a primary purple, but it's what I had like close, and I figured it would work, and it did. The important part is that neither of these colors has black in them. When you're making skin tones, you never want to mix in something with black. At least not if you're working with lighter skin tones. When you get darker, you want to avoid a ton of black as long as you can. Unless you're doing true blue-black, like that really, really dark skin tone. At that point, you've got to go more toward the black range. But you still want to have like a certain like life and richness to the color. So in the very darkest of skin tones, I would say that's when you don't have to worry about the black. But anything from like golden brown, like that rich golden brown color on up through all of the other skin tones, don't go black. The exception being, of course, like drow flesh, something like that that's meant to be gray in order to look unnatural, or at least have a gray component, like purple gray, bluish purple gray, whatever you're going to use, then you can not worry about the black, but otherwise I believe in avoiding black pigment until the very last minute with skin tones. Daffodil, thank you for the resub. 29 months. Very nice. Very nice. But yeah, I read Crows. I don't believe in spoilers, so I actually read the first 5 chapters that he posted of the first book, and he got me because of what it is. It's like totally up my wheelhouse what he wrote for that first book. So I'm not going to spoiler it because I respect Brandon's wishes and the wishes of his audience. But let's just say that is totally, if I could have asked for Brandon Sanderson or any author to write a book that would totally appeal to me, that's it. Like right there. So I am actually going to back his Kickstarter now. I'm not a fan of like total mystery content because I have so little time to read. But yeah, I want to read the rest of that book. So I'm using a tiny bit of NMM Gold Highlight. I may actually have gone a little bit too much, but we'll find out. A little bit of yellow, and then some white for your highlight, for if you're highlighting up your skin. And again, we're going to start with our base color and work up with it. So I'm going to build a highlight, and then I'm going to build a blush color. So you can use any color with this, but the brighter the yellow you use, the less you want of it. All of the mystery boxes, you gonna go all in, lady? Yeah, I was totally thinking I wasn't going to Crows until I found out the first book was right up my alley, and then I was like, oh well. I mean, the others might not be. The problem is you can't just buy one, so I'd have to go in for all the ebooks pretty much, which is all I'm really interested in. I don't need a physical copy. I like Brandon's writing, but I wouldn't call myself like a super fan. I enjoy several of his series, but there are others that I'm not that into, so we'll see. So this is the color we get, and it is very yellow because I did go a little bit overboard. So I'm going to actually mix in a bit more of my base skin tone, which will help drag it back a little bit. And I can thin it down to make it less yellow so that I'm just... Now this is quite a difference. So in actuality, what I probably want to do is I probably want to grab a brush full of that and a brush full of my base skin tone and even mix another transition phase. Again, as you work on bigger models, you'll be using probably more transitions. On 28mm skin tones, I tend to just think that five levels, like a pentad of shadows and highlights, is adequate for a really good figure. Like 5 levels of shading and highlighting total will give you a very nice result. But if you feel like there's too much difference between your what you've got here and your next step, then mix something that's halfway between. I mean, whatever is in your comfort zone, I would like this skin on this to look really good, so I'm going to go that way. Hey, Joe Frick, how's it going? So I've got less than 3 weeks to Adepticon. I have to refocus and make sure I get my competition entry done. This is the point where you feel that resistance, where you're just like, oh, I don't want to work on it. But you have to work on it, or it's not going to get there. And it's always silly, because you feel the resistance until you sit down to do it, and then the resistance just disappears. And this is like the truth of all creative endeavors. It's like, sometimes you just like... The more important it is to you, the less you feel like doing it until you're doing it. And then you're like, why wasn't I doing this before? It's a weird creative thing. Hello, Dogfather. Oh, no. I've just, because I'm not a Brandon superfan and because I don't like all of his series, like I'm not into Mistborn, it just really didn't grab me. It's not my thing. I want to just do the ebooks. Though I'm sure one is probably science fiction, and I may not enjoy that one as much, because I tend to be very picky about my sci-fi. So I'm going to put the highlight up here on the forehead. because that's where your golden color should look. See how that picking up that light on the top of the brow ridge, like that's this area here, and there's you've got a definite like kind of a recess here on your head, and then you've got like bone ridges that go up here and connect up here. So there isn't a lot of room to do that in a 28mm face. What I tend to do is I tend to keep the shadow between the eyebrows, but otherwise a lot of the forehead is going to get highlighted, even though, you know, if this were a bigger model, I'd be able to put more variation in it. Thanks for the update on Base Bus in our 3 hours left. I have not heard about ReaperCon tickets. I did just get my badges for KublaCon, where I will be teaching. So if you are in California or Oregon or anywhere else that might be like reasonably close, or you're looking for an excuse to visit San Francisco and you'd like to pick up some miniature painting classes while you're here, look at Memorial Day weekend. Because KublaCon goes on then. David and I are both teaching a couple classes. I do not know if there are seats left. I have not actually looked at sales. I'm gonna get that nose highlighted. Gonna hit the area right under her eyes. Her eyes are very squinty. This is gonna be very, I don't even know if we're gonna be able to paint her eyes really. We might. There are lots of excuses in San Francisco. It's really a beautiful city with so many interesting things to look at. I actually looked up a list of like weird things in San Francisco, like that people generally don't know about, but that are cool anyway. And I made a list for David and I to go explore. I should probably make him go do that at some one of these weekends. Now the weather's getting a little better. So a little bit of a highlight on top of the cheekbone and a little bit on the chin. I am going to extend a highlight a little bit to the other side of the face at this point, which I've kept mostly in shadow. But just like on our bust, we want a little bit of highlight to extend back there. The upper lip is also something that's very hard to paint on miniatures. It's very thin usually, like the area between the nose and the upper lip. But you should have a highlight there, like there is definitely a highlight there on your own face when you're under light. So keep in mind. Then I might come at this from the other side because it's going to be easier. Just a little bit. Not as high of a highlight as on this side of the face, but just enough. Just to give it a little bit of a pickup. And right across, remember, just like on our bust, the inner part of this cheekbone will typically catch the light because it'll come through this area right across the bridge of the nose. So a little bit of a highlight there so that her face looks cool. Then I can take my top really yellow highlight and just use that. Actually, I think I need more white in it at this point. Again, on a 28mm, 5 stages of highlight and shadow total usually give you a really good face. And if you find yourself mixing more, then you probably are going to eclipse some of your previous colors. Here I want this to be my top highlight, so I want it to be closer to white. Skin is glossy. It has a sheen to it because of our oils on our skin. There's lots of interesting places in California, yeah. But anyway, so if you are looking for a class earlier than ReaperCon, at the other end of the holiday, summer bracket holidays, we'll call them that, Memorial Day and Labor Day. ReaperCon being on Labor Day, but if you are in the area, just be aware there is a convention and we are teaching at it. Now I want to get a little bit of highlight here in the center of the forehead. So the way to use more highlights is to make them very small. I've got my previous highlight still out there, so if I find that I'm losing some blending, I can bring it back. And I still have my base color, so if I feel like I've lost some of that or I need to smooth things out, I can glaze with that. Whenever you feel like your skin color has departed a bit from what you originally envisioned, that's when it's time to bring that base color back in and glaze with it and bring things back into line with what you originally had in mind. Hello, Marble. And bring in a little bit of highlight here and here. Just bringing up little areas of highlight to bring the light up. As you can see, the fingers really stand out now on that side. The upper arm is looking good. Could bring the entire upper arm up a little bit. So we got a nice tan skin tone out of this. And I still need to add some reddish hues. That'll be the next thing to do. This hand is really well sculpted. The spellcasting hand. There, bringing in the lines of the hand where it's clenching. Concentrating on where I want my top highlights to be. Now this arm's a little bit in shadow because it's a little recessed, but this part is standing out, so I can go there and bring it up a little bit. That may have been a little bit too much. Get some water and bring it down. That's better. All right, have fun, Joe Ferg. Thanks for stopping in. One thing I do not have after my shadow is I've lost the highlight kind of on the edge of the jaw here. So I'm going to bring it back just a little bit, coming back from the chin. Just so we have a little bit of that coming back. Putting that little highlight on the jaw brings out the shape of the face apart from the neck here. Yeah, good point, Inara. It's all about planning with pre-order tickets. Gives you an idea what to expect. Yes, if you're going, be kind to your Reaper peeps and pre-order. And don't wait till the last minute. There we go. So that's nice. I like this a lot, actually. Gotta get a little bit on the back here. But this is mostly in shadow back here, so I'm just going to get a little bit of the hand and a little bit of the arm and the hand up here. And I'm just not going to go up to my brightest highlight here. I'm still going to put a highlight to bring things out. Don't forget the knuckles on the hands. Honestly, with 28mm hands, it's usually the easiest to just, if you're going to highlight the fingers, to highlight the knuckles, the tips of the fingers, and like both sets of knuckles. Knuckles on the middle of the finger and on the back. And that is enough, because those areas would stand out. So I usually put a highlight there to bring them out. All right. Excellent. So one more little bit. I need to add this really yellowy light highlight a couple other places. Yeah, I'm curious to see how many people we get at ReaperCon this year. We had a really good turnout last year. So I'm going to hit just the top of the cheekbone to really get the light coming down the face here. Get pretty good light there on the face now. A little bit on the very tippy top of the chin. All right, that's actually looking really good. Now I just need some reddish color, essentially, across her face. So I'm going to grab a dark color, a dark red. What have I got? I grabbed Dragon Red, so we'll just go with it. I tend to look for a dark red that's not got a real black color to it. Dragon Red has no black in it, like something like Violet Red, Deep Red. All those colors don't have black. Asmodeus, for the most part, I think, might have a tiny bit of black, but not very much. But I tend to use a dark red. If you are painting a very young person, then using a brighter red to create your blush color and lip color is fair play, and it would give you more of a girlish pink color, or a very vamp red if you want to push it that far. But for any like more mature woman, I tend to, for any woman I want to be taken seriously, I tend to go with a darker red, unless it's part of her persona, to go for the brighter red and pink. So I'm gonna again build this off of our midtone. I'm gonna mix it in and get a kind of a muted, darker red, pinky color. And that's not quite red enough. I feel like I needed a little more red, because I like to glaze with this color. Let's see how that works. That's a bit redder. Now I'm going to actually add a little tiny bit of white. The white is going to bring the red out more. Although, you know what? Before I do that, I think I'm going to actually use this on the lips, because having a darker line around the outer edge of the lips helps to define them. So before I add white to really bring out the pinky color on this, I'm going to do that. And I think I'll also do like the shadow under the cheekbone. So that was made just mixing a little Dragon Red in. So let's do that. It really is, if you're on 28 mils, it really helps to line around the lips with a darker color. Sometimes I've done it with liner. This one I'm going to try it with this red and see if it's dark enough. It may not be. With lighter skin tones, you can get away with not going quite as dark, obviously, because you have more contrast. Yeah, that's not a lot of contrast. That's a really naturalistic color. So what I think I'm going to do then is I'm going to grab my Dragon Red and use it straight, because this is a pretty dark red, and that may work better. So I'm going to grab that and just do a little bit and see if I can get the line of the lips. This is a good blush color though, because it'll look very natural. So again, the colors that I've got here, there, kind of see where the color's turning out. This is Dragon Red straight up, with a little bit of water in it so that I can work with it. I have to do a thin line with it, so I have to thin it. But there you can see the two colors that I'm using. And this one is mixed with our base skin tone with the Dragon Red. And then we've got pure Dragon Red, so I can do a darker red line around their lips. And actually, you know what? Coming in on that, I'm going to actually mix up a little bit of Rogue Shadow as well, because I want to do the line of the mouth, and I do want to do that with a very dark color. A liner, in fact, which Rogue Shadow is. And it is a reddish liner. And if I want to, I can even take a little bit of that Dragon Red and put it into there, since I'm planning to use it around that area. I'm going to do a 4-to-1 with water. That's nice. Rogue Shadow is a little more potent as far as dark color compared to brown liner. All right, so let's see what we can do here. Okay, so I'm going to do the liner first. And I want to just get the line of the mouth between the upper and lower lip. There's always a dark line there. And if there is any upper lip to speak of, make it this color. Many 28mm faces are sculpted rather neutrally because it's so small. It's sometimes hard to get a very over-the-top expression. And when you have a neutral expression, the nice thing about it is that you can maybe make the corner of the mouth tilt up if you want her to have kind of a slight smile. Or you can leave it more serious and straight, or you can make it a frown. It's very easy to just like kind of tune that outer edge of the mouth to get her looking one way or another. So that's the upside of a neutral face. And you will see a lot of neutral face expressions on 28mm just precisely for that reason. It's just difficult to put like real subtleties on something so small. Yes, Rogue Shadow is in a fast palette. Quindy would probably be able to figure out which one. I do not off the top of my head remember if it's High Seas Horror or if it's one of the others. Gloom and Grave, Grave and Gloom, whatever it is. But it and Death Knight Black, I think it might be the... I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember. It's a nice liner, though. Like, I've been using it kind of in place of brown liner because my brown liner is hanging out in the other room right now. So, which is nice because it makes me kind of like go through and put it through its paces. So if I want to use it to also line around the skin at this point, I can, because I've lost a little bit of my skin lining. And that line always helps to bring out everything. You can see the line here between the bracer and the skin. It helps to bring out all of the details. Dungeon Dwellers, thank you, Carrie Michael. The base, this is actually a black base. And essentially my camera will bleach out Jormundir. My camera will bleach out the colors. It'll make all these colors really dark because the palette is so white. So I keep the big base around because it lets me, essentially the camera will adjust to it and then you guys can actually see the colors as I mix them. So when I do this, when I introduce the big base, then I'm looking up at my camera to make sure that the color I see here on camera looks exactly like the color as I'm looking at it. And so that's why the big base comes in. And I work against a gray backdrop because I find that it gives you guys the actual colors, with some exceptions. Like my big bust, for some reason, the camera keeps trying to adjust us very yellow. But yes, it's the base. Yeah, I have a gigantic base and I'm not afraid to use it. Yet another use for Base Boss bases. This is the nice big one. I think it's 50 mil. 74031. Very useful for bigger models. But yeah, it's to to tune my camera's white balance. Yup. Streamer tricks. Alrighty, so now I want to grab my red and see if I paint her lips all dragon red. Or if I just try to do a liner on the bottom. That brings in a bit more of a red look, and it does define the lips a little bit better. So, all right. Now I want to add some white to see if I can get some pink here. I don't want to go like super pink. You just want to, I mean, anybody's lips are pink. They're just very fleshy pink, and that's what I'm going for here. Like I said, unless I was doing dramatic makeup on her. Ooh, that went very, very light, very quickly. I'm gonna go the other way. pure white, what I've just forgotten and what I always tell you guys to remember is that pure white is really powerful. And when you use it, you should expect quite the shift. So essentially I got a very large shift. And I had to do some quick mixing between that and the dragon. So now these are the colors I'm ending up with. This color and this both have some of that skin tone in them, but they both have a little bit more red than when I started. It's still a very natural pink. It's still kind of an antique pink, as you can see. ReaperCon tickets might be up, but we're not sure. So I expect you all to go run over there. Like, I'll just pause. Not available. Ah, site is updated with the button, but nothing currently on sale. Yes, all right. Curb your excitement just for a little while. Alrighty. So unless I use a really bright red, I'm not going to get like an extreme color on her lips. Really, I just want to have a hint of a rosier color. And now what I really need is to kind of highlight that. I'm also missing a highlight at the corner of her mouth, which is a pretty important one when you want to define the mouth. You kind of see how the edge of the mouth kind of trails off here and it's not really defined. On faces, you get a pocket of muscle right here. And on miniatures, even 28mm, if you have the brush control, it's a very advisable thing to use that to hit that little pocket of muscle. That's a very too much, but we can glaze that. Right placement, wrong size. So block that out and try again. It's a little bit less paint. So remember that not just shading and lining, but that highlights can help define your tiny details. Yeah, it pinks out. It goes a bit coral, the red oxide with white. I find it, I mean, some skin tones, that would be a good lip color. This one, I don't think so. I'm just trying to really delicately get that highlight around the mouth. There we go. Now that lets me have that highlight right there, and it allows me to maybe define the corner of this mouth a little bit better, depending on how small I want the mouth to be. She has a very small mouth. So I may decide that I don't want quite that much. I lost a little bit of my lining. So yeah, you can see that tweaking a 28mm expression gets very fine work very fast. But if you do want a strong expression, it's worth working on it. Taking my rogue shadow and bringing it back in because I lost the corner of the mouth here. There we go. It's a little bit better. Need to trim it up a bit. Also, I have a little bit of a line here on her face. Kind of the line that goes here. And so I'm debating how I want to tackle that. Normally you do a shadow and then you do a highlight. She's got such a small face. And I'm not sure I want to go there. So I'm like, may just skip it. And again, with very small scale stuff like this, there's so much you can do, and then you're going to be running in circles, correcting one way, correcting the other. So when you have, I think I'm just going to accentuate the highlight here. So when you have a good result like this, I pretty much like this result. stick with it. Don't mess with it too much. There is definitely a point where you can overwork things, in my experience. Yeah, it's too yellow for the iron oxide. I may have got it right here, the oxide red. But yes. And now it's looking really, really yellow. It went yellow on us. No, this is what I want to avoid. It seems to do it when I get too close to the model. And then when I zoom out, I get my warm tones back. There we go, better. Yes, the camera is definitely going a bit yellow when I get too close in. There we go. That's more like what she looks like in person. You can see the warm tones now. Now I am going to go and get that shadow in under her cheekbone. I tend to put the red tones in last. I don't know why. It's just kind of a habit for me. Tend to work shadows first, but then I usually want my highlights in place to get a kind of a view of the skin tone, and then I add in my reds. I think mostly because I don't want the reds to get too overwhelming, but I want enough there to get the tones I want. I feel like that's not going to be strong enough. I'm going to need more dragon red. Totally. Well, yeah, we've got the latest oxides. I don't use yellow oxide a lot. I will admit to you that even when I was making the Master Series paint line, yellow ochre is not my favorite color. So the yellow oxide is used in specific things, but in general, it's not a color I reach for a lot. I far prefer like a raw sienna if I'm going to go for a muted yellow. But that's a personal preference. Like, it's totally personal preference. All right, got a bit stronger brown. Now, the thing with 28 mil, guys, again, it's when you do real subtle stuff, it's really hard to pick out. It doesn't really show up a lot, and it's because everything is so small. So if I really want a red tone to show up, I had to make it brighter. I had to make it, you know, put more red in it than I originally would have. If I would have been working on a bust, like with our lady that we've been working on, this one, if I'm working on a bust, I can go a much more naturalistic shade of pink for the mouth, and I can get these subtle reddish tones up here in the ears and in the cheeks, and they'll show up because it's big enough. But when you're doing tiny, and 28 mil is pretty tiny, then you pretty much have to overemphasize it if you want it to show up, if you want it to be anything other than pure subtlety. Because the smaller a thing is, the more intense the color needs to be for the eye to notice it. And the bigger it is, it can be quite subtle and you would still see the color. Yeah, I tend to even mix my mustards in a different way. Maybe it's me holding a grudge on the fact that on our pigment wheel, the yellow oxide was always the one to clog. So I spent many, many hours of my career at Reaper Miniatures cleaning out the nozzle on the yellow oxide pigment. Because it's like dirt. It's very thick and goopy. It's a thick and goopy pigment. I want to take down some of this red. I want to blend in some of this. Just doctoring it a little bit. Get a little bit more of the shape of the face. The cheek's pretty round here. I do have some red tones in it now, so I'm pretty happy. I think it's very much a personal preference on how you build. Like, what mixing the Reaper paint line taught me is there are many ways to get to any particular color. And the thing that will be affected is your coverage, sometimes your saturation, but I didn't care about coverage because I use a lot of very thin paint, so I didn't feel I don't reach for the oxides as much as I could. Although brown oxide is my favorite, I do love brown oxide, all of its various permutations. I had a more specific tool for it. Yeah, unclogging, but yes. The phthalos were fine. Like all of the pigment wheel colors, the dispensers, everybody was cool except for yellow oxide. Yellow oxide was the troublemaker. So I will blame my anti-yellow oxide bias upon that experience. That 17 years of dealing with that pigment wheel experience. All right, I want just a little bit more here. And it's so small that I will have trouble getting it around the nose, but I can try. It just probably won't read. But I want those rosy tones, so I'm going to go for it just a little bit. They will getting turned on once everybody gets back from lunch around 2 p.m. USA Central Time. Mark your calendars. Crash the system by all trying to log in at once. Yeah, that. You didn't hear me say that. I totally didn't say that. But yeah, Thalos never gave me any trouble. Phthalo Green and Queen of Magenta are probably my two favorite pigments to work with, just for their absolute prettiness. Beautiful color. All right, cool. I think we're good. We've got enough red tones in it now. I feel like I still need the bottom of that jawline picked up. She has a very heart-shaped face, and her jawline is somewhat recessed. See this angle? And that's why my highlights are not working great to bring out that jawline, is because I'm fighting the actual sculpt. So I could give up, or I could try just a little bit more and just leave it at that. Well, there's no limit on tickets, so you should be fine. It's not like you guys have to race to this one. There, a little bit more of a highlight coming back from the chin. You see that? Helps to lead the eye and define the shape of the face. And there we go. So pretty good there. I did kind of a silver blue base coat on her hair, as you guys can see before. I'm going to do this hardcore, I think, coming up with bits of pure white. This is how I usually do it when I'm doing it for myself, when I'm highlighting up to white for silver hair. I will take my white and thin it way down and build it up. So I'm going to grab 4 drops of pure white. I'm going to do at least 1-to-1. Stress-free admission, yes. Yeah, save your stress for classes, exactly. Yeah, I haven't even gotten an email about submitting classes yet, I don't think. So at a 1-to-1, we will see how much this white covers. So that's pretty subtle. That little streak I just did, that's actually perfect. Because what I want here isn't to cover up all of my silver blue start. What I want here is just enough to be able to start suggesting texture and to build it up. So my first layer just creates a lighter silver blue by putting the white over the silver blue base coat. As far as what this color is, I don't even remember, because for this model I just haven't been keeping track, but I suspect it was a cyan blue and cloudy gray mix. But I do actually enjoy, this is kind of time consuming in a way. But for silver hair, this is how I like to do it. I just like to start with a really, really thinned white and just build it up and build it up and build it up and concentrate slowly more and more on the areas that will be a higher highlight, bring out details. And then if I need to restore shadows anywhere, I can do it. But this first coat will pretty much pick out all the strands and masses, everything. And we'll only leave the blue in the areas between the masses at this point, and I'm going to wipe out a lot of that as I continue. But first I want to get all the strands with the first highlight on them. We went to a Gilbert and Sullivan production yesterday, and I was just looking at the brocades and everybody, all the ladies' dresses, and thinking about how you would try to do it in 28 millimeter. But you really couldn't. You could do the basic color pattern, and there was a lot of brown and mustard, and some pale blue and some pale green. And a little bit of teal, as I recall, as far as the colors go. But there was a lot of cream and brown and gold. No, you just can't do it. Not even a problem, Merilith. I think it's like, because you have to simplify freehand so much at 28. Something like a brocade, you would have to just very much simplify into like bars and circles. Even the best painters like Kat and Marika, they stick to simple geometrics when they go that small. So there are definitely limits. But it looks cool when you can do it, like when you can do any sort of freehand, involved freehand at that scale. I like to do representational freehands, so I tend to do, I guess I did almost a brocade here on the interior of Lisette. That's almost. If I had done it even smaller, that would have been close. I feel like leaves and flower patterns, like that organic leaf and flower pattern, is a lot easier. Paisleys goes too small. And then the tree. But I feel like that Lisette dress is probably the closest I've come to doing kind of a brocade at 28. I should try to do something smaller, although it's just like, it's hard to find. Like it was very well placed on that model, but I do feel like freehand should be purposeful, so it's not like I just want to grab any model and do that kind of freehand on it. But I was thinking about some of the patterns that could be used. And of course, when you get into busts or 75s, you have a lot more options as far as the intricacy of what you can do. Which is why I have at least one Japanese woman in a kimono model. Bust specifically, so that at some point I can do something elaborate. But I have a lot of other things to do in the meantime. Stockpile your stress for the right occasion, Squinty. Yeah, right. Man, if humans could manage their stress appropriately, a lot of the problems in the world would go away. So I'm going to start building up more of this on top of the head here, the white. And on top of the head, there isn't going to be a lot of the dark blue silver showing at all because that's where the light is falling. I'm still using a brush stroke that goes in line with the strands of hair just because I don't want there to be lines going in the wrong direction. And this white is just strong enough that you can see the brush strokes, so you do want to keep going in the right direction. So yeah, I just like to build it up, and if I'm always using the same brush strokes, the texture will build up naturally and the hair will begin to go paler and paler. Now, one thing you could do, and this model kind of defies it, she doesn't want to, her hair is really thick where it's depicted, but if you have a model, they said it would be live at 2 p.m. Central Time, I think. Dogfather. Was it? It was at 2, after everybody gets back from lunch. So if you're trying to deal with it right now, chances are it's in an intermediate stage and they're trying to work out bugs. I probably wouldn't try to deal with the, I wouldn't try to order yet. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are issues. I would hold off and give Reaper folk time to get things set up. One thing I will do probably is glaze the white over parts of this. But oh, I was saying, if she had a part in her hair, one thing you can do to give some more realism to even on 28 is if she had a part and her hair was going down on both sides, you could take her skin tone and actually put a tiny trace of it down the middle of the part. And that definitely gives you more of a feel that the hair is hair and not just that it's this cap of stuff on top of the head that's a completely different color. We'll start bringing out the different locks of hair. And I like to do this technique with the white where I'm just building up additional layers and layers of the really thinned white because it gives me a lot of control from stage to stage. I can start bringing things up and then I can continue to intensify them. As I bring various stuff up, I can glaze. I can slowly bring the hair more and more toward white without losing all my shadows. Like this, doing it this way allows me to see where my shadows should go and just kind of make a note to keep them dark. I haven't gone all the way yet, so I have a lot of leeway over parts I want to push more and parts I don't want to touch at all. Oh, on this model's getting freehand. I don't know if I would do this because you already have decorative edging. And also I'd ask what the purpose was. If I was doing something here, it would have to be like a lightning bolt or something that, I don't know. She's kind of what we wanted. I wanted to kind of make a celestial wizard of sorts. So like a simple star pattern maybe. But because she's already got a lot of elaborate decoration here, you're already challenged to, the eye is going to want to travel down here. And so more freehand is just going to pull the eye down here and away from up here. That's why I'm kind of thought I would go with the white hair and as opposed to another color. It's going to draw the eye, and the contrast between the silver blue and the warm skin should draw the eye. So it's going to combat all this close detail down here. I feel like it's going to be a challenge to keep this figure balanced that way. So unless it was a very simple star pattern, I probably would leave the freehand for the back of the model, which is just made for it. I'm always conscious of where I want the eye to go on a figure, and I don't do freehand for freehand's sake. Lizette was a exception where I went freehand down below, and the reason I went with it is I felt I could keep it pretty subtle. And she also, you know, has white hair, so you're noticing a trend. And dark skin, noticing a trend. Because then when you look at this figure, you do look up top. And because this freehand is more subtle, you only see it later. And so that's kind of my rule for if I put freehand down lower on a model, if it's on the front of the model, it's gotta kind of not be smack you in the face freehand so that it doesn't distract from the figure's character, which is really the important part. I'm very conscious of what's the important part of the figure. This is a great figure if you have the sculpting ability or you want to try, but to try to put a kind of a spell effect coming up out of that open palm. Since she is Bones USA, it's the simplest thing ever to just sink a wire into that palm and kind of sculpt like a flame or some sort of like elemental or something like that coming out. You could even have it curve up over her head, and it would actually be a really cool compositional piece for the figure. If I get really inspired, maybe we'll do that. Because you can always do it later as you're just drilling a hole in the palm. Yeah, I try to keep very much in mind, Marilith, where I want people to look. What's the important part of this figure? And with almost all figures, that's going to be the character itself, i.e. what's encapsulated in the character's expression and movement in the upper torso. What is she doing? Where is she looking? What is her expression? What kind of person does she seem to be? Freehand is nice, and it can get gratuitous very quickly. I tend, ever since I was a younger painter, I have not liked freehand just for freehands. Freehand just to get oohs and ahs doesn't impress me. Freehand that really integrates with the character and leads the eye around the figure without pulling it away in the wrong direction, that sort of freehand I can really get behind. I think part of the success of like Kat Martin and Marika Reimer and the very small freehand that they have done and intricate on 28 mil is that it's often very integrated into the figure. Like it's more subtle and it's not smack you in the face freehand. So you notice it, you still look at the character first though. So bringing this back here, I'm going to start fading it out and making sure I keep it a little darker as it goes down the back of her head. But I still want that texture there and the suggestion of hair. Most of you know that I don't normally start doing texture until I'm on highlights, but when you're working up with pure white from your shadow to make something that is supposed to be white, pretty much everything you put on is going to show, and so you want to be sure you're being consistent about the texture that you're suggesting. And because I'm working everything up from white, I'm probably not going to be able to do... I might be able to do micro highlights. We'll see. If I use a stronger white, I probably can do that. But I can't necessarily suggest the strand texture as much as I've done on some darker hair colors, because you just don't have as much contrast. So it gets a little harder. Hello, squid. If you could find the right pose, Valandar. I think it'd be really cool to have a spell effect in that hand, though. The other problem with putting another figure holding this hand is that this hand is really beautifully sculpted, and if you put a figure with their hand over the top of hers, it's going to hide that. It's a really nicely sculpted hand. So I think I would, for me, I would avoid covering it up because I think it's really cool. But if I do a little tiny thread of putty coming up and then build it into like some sort of spell effect, that I can do because that keeps the hand. It doesn't cover it up as much. So we're trying to get all of these forms kind of set in. Since this is the top of the hair, a lot of it will be light. So we'll cover up a lot of it with our first layer of white. but it is also on the back of the head. So some of the back part here won't be as light, but all this stuff will get pretty light. Yeah, it's a weird hair color. Every once in a while I like doing a weird hair color, and I think that doing white hair lends itself because you can use almost anything as the ground color. You could go purple, you can go bluish like we did here, you could go green like we did on Lizette. And it still gives you white hair, but it gives you that underlying color that makes it magical. So she definitely has a magical hair color. So as you can see, if I really keep layering up white on these strands, I can pick them up a lot lighter than they are here. They looked light at first, but now you can see how much lighter it's possible to go. Now is when I'm going to start paying attention to where my highlights would go on the hair. Like where would the hair actually catch the light, and layering those in heavier. But also I need to make sure that I don't miss these strands underneath. I want to bring them up just a little, about like that. No, yellow. If you look at albino, the hair definitely goes yellowish, I think, at the core, not gray. I might do yellow gray, maybe a bone color. If you look at albino snakes, you see the yellow pigment, and given those are reptiles and not mammals, but you'll see the same sort of thing. I think you go more of a cream or bone. Gray can be a very unnatural color, or it can be a very cool organic color. If you mixed your gray by putting together, colors instead of using black and white, you probably could use gray hair on albino and it would look just great. Especially if you mix like yellows and purples to create that gray. Because that would give you, but a flat gray, like the flat carbon gray, it tends to look like a pencil illustration. Even on a miniature, it looks weird and unnatural because white is so reflective. It picks up so much color from the environment. And in the case of hair is translucent, so it's gonna pick up stuff from environment and skin color, and I feel like doing an albino is more complex. So just a little bit of highlight on the bottom here, but I'm mostly going to concentrate a lot of my highlights on the top now. I don't know if I could find the model, but I'd show you what I mean. It would be... Let me see if I can find it real quick. I know where it would be. Way back before I moved. Should be able to either nail it quick or just give up. All right, so after that. And I don't know if I kept the earliest pictures of this model, but I think I did. Aha. Did I? Yeah, I think I did. So this guy. The NMM, given it's NMM and not hair color, but the NMM has no colors in it yet. It's only black and white. And so it looks very pencil illustration. And that's what I'm talking about with don't use gray. Now, given you were talking about like touching gray, putting a touch of gray in, and that can work. But I wouldn't use actual, I don't know that I would use actual gray at all. I think I would create an organic gray. I think I wonder if I have an ending picture of that model. Yeah, I don't know. Don't want to waste more time looking for it. But you get the idea. It just looks, I ended up glazing colors into that NMM to reflect the colors of the clothing and the environment around the figure. And it made it look 20 times better. So I always hesitate on using an actual gray, unless you are going to mix, like you say, if you're going to mix a touch of gray into like an ivory color or something like that, that would probably give you pretty good. But even then, I think these days I would go away from using actual gray and I would use complementaries to mix it. Give you something more interesting. It's a Liquitex flexible sculpting gel putty paste. I think it's flexible modeling paste. It's the flexible. It's the only flexible paste they make with that word in the title. But yeah, I don't think I've ever painted anything albino because it's very hard to make it look correct. If you're using a different black then, or a different... When people say gray in chat here, I tend to think they're thinking of a straight gray, which is, you know, coal black and titanium white. But yes, if you... It's just, yeah, I always tend to think, because when you look at an albino skin, it's very sallow, it's very yellowish. You'd get some of that. You'd probably mix your hair color into something like yellowed bone or something like in between these colors. And I would probably just use purple. I'm really attracted to organic colors lately though, so take me with a grain of salt. Very much more into building grays and complex browns with complementary colors and a lot less reaching. I don't even use pure black anymore, although the colors I use to mix my blacks do have a little bit of black in them. Unless I'm doing tube paint. When I'm using scale 75 tube paint, I use colors that don't have black at all to mix my black. But with Reaper, I tend to grab the liners and mix them together, mix complements together. So raising up, now I'm going to start killing these streaks because we would get a highlight down the back of the head here. So I'll put a highlight around the crown of the head. There's a very large lock of hair here, so I'm going to keep that. But I'm going to start phasing out the shadows between those strands there, so they're much lighter. On the front of the head, the highlight would stop around here probably. So I'm going to make it heavier. And I'm going to get rid of the strands around there. I'm going to bring a little bit down because I didn't highlight all the way down at first. I think albinos would be a pain in the butt. Like I watched Michelle Farnsworth do her working on her big dragon that she did for Creature Caster that she did in albino. And it is so much like any model that asks you to paint that much white. Oh dear. I think she was about ready to strangle it when by the time she was done. I don't think I enjoy painting white enough to do a big project with an albino skin tone. There, so we got that coming down. Even though I painted directly over the strands here and I phased out this these shadows in between, I'm going to go a little stronger on that. Following the principle that anything on top of the head is going to be a little bit lighter. You're not going to see any big dark shadows up there in general. So you're minimizing them. You can see how I've minimized them compared to back here. You still get a little bit of shadow there. I don't want a sharp cutoff. I want kind of a blurred out cutoff. So if I get a sharp line, I'm going to bring in my white and disrupt it. So we've still got traces of that silver blue, but now her hair is starting to definitely read white because we've covered up a lot of that silver blue. There's still enough to give us the hints of that color, though. Just down in the shadows. When you're trying to get something to look white, remember, the majority of the area has to be white, or something very close to it. I tend to go, if I had to pick my favorite color palette, I don't know, I go all over the place these days. I do draw inspiration from traditional art, but I tend to like the pre-Raphaelites. I tend to like very naturalistic tones. I like Baroque art, the dark and light contrast in the paintings. My fiance and I collect original paintings from local artists. And there's some pieces that we've picked up that I would like to adapt. But I tend not to be drawn to anything too monochrome. I like color too much. I do like muted color schemes, that said. There's still one color scheme that I've been wanting to try that I saw in a painting in an art museum, and I still haven't found the right model for it. So we'll lighten up the hair. We'll keep some of the dark silver shadows here. We'll lighten up the hair on top now. Yeah, I like color. I like impressionists, even though sometimes they go over the top with it. I take pictures of artwork when we go to museums. If I see one that has a color pattern or a combo that I especially like. So glaze of white over the top there to bring everything up together. Yeah, in general, monochrome schemes to me are a bit, I don't know, for me it's kind of boring. Everybody's got a different opinion of art. There we go. These days I'm actually less inclined to try more avant-garde uses of color and more inclined to go as natural as I can. I've mentioned before, but I come from a traditional art background, and always I was very jealous of my classmates who could do realism, and my work always felt so cartoony compared to theirs. With that miniature painting, with the sculpt being the equalizer, I found it possible to like concentrate more on natural light, natural textures, natural colors, and really embrace that. So that's the way I tend to go. So we've very much we've brought a lot of white in. You can still see shadows, but we can still see details, but we've brought a lot of white in up here. I do want to bring up even a bit more on the top parts to help bring out some of that detail that I've lost or minimized. And if I really want to show you guys the difference, because it looks white, it looks very white, but if I use a pure white, how different is it? Let's get a little drop of titanium here and use it pretty much straight and put it just on here. So look at how bright that is. Like you can see that, and now you see the rest of it, and now it makes the rest of it look blue. So it's always relative. It's always relative. And you can see how subtly I've been bringing it up with the thinned white compared to that pop of pure hard white. Alrighty, but that's okay. So if I do want to bring up a little bit more intensity, I just mix that little drop of white into my body of my white. So I've thickened it up now a little bit with that drop. So now I can start bringing in where I feel like the highlights would be hair undulates, at least this kind of wavy hair will highlight on a bell curve. So you'll have a highlight fading down to a shadow, fading up to a highlight. Some of these strands don't really allow for that. You've got to kind of figure out where the light would kind of hold and pool and reflect. Hair is one of probably the last thing I learned how to paint in my painting career. It was always difficult for me. I had to study how other painters did it to understand it, to start to understand it, and I still feel like I could get much better at it. Too much. Blurf. I will try to hit the end of strands if I can. If I can't hit like the raised kind of area up here, I'll try to hit the trough down here if I figure light would fall there. You can vary it up a bit. We tend to go much bolder and broader with highlights on hair that's 28 millimeters. Just like everything else, you're overemphasizing and kind of simplifying, making it very simplistic, so that it can convey the idea of the movement and the light of the hair. Even though if it were much larger, this would look like really wrong. Parts of it would anyway. But again, we can get much finer detail with larger models. So this is another challenge of painting at 28, is that you can get away with simplifying a lot, but you also must simplify a lot. which does make this hobby such a great entry point into like art concepts in a lot of ways. So bring out that, since it's coming out of her ponytail here and it's poofing out and catching the light, I'm going to put a lot of light right up there at the top. And if I miss a little bit of my shadow, I can always bring it back in, but I'm not too concerned up there with missing a little bit. But yeah, so many people in, at least here in North America, don't come to this hobby with any art background, so simplification is actually pretty good. Makes it easier. Is it possible to ease people into concepts? I forget who it was. We were talking the other day in chat, and they were like, this person told me to add more blues and greens into my skin tones, and I was like, well, are you already doing 3-zone, highlighting on like faces and stuff? And they're like, and I'm like, okay. And they're like, oh, that person is trying to teach me like algebra before I know basic math. And I'm like, yeah, kinda. It was kind of a good analogy. Estrogene, I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure it was cyan mixed with like with a traditional gray. So I went against my traditional advice there. And part of the reason it's looking so different and so high contrast to the skin is because I did use a gray. I didn't mix it organically. If I really had thought about it, I would have done what I did here, mixed a gray like this, which is from the skin tone plus bits of purple and blue. And this is a lot more organic gray, and I could have even brought it closer to the skin tone so it would look more natural. But I also was wanting it to look unnatural because she's a wizard. So I was kind of thinking of the Jaina Proudmoore thing where you've got very unusual. Yeah, thanks, Quindy. Oh, yeah, right, Marilyn. That makes friends. No. I like to build people up so they can understand concepts. Otherwise, you alienate them, and they decide the hobby isn't for them, and that's the opposite of what I want. So, and the opposite of what Reaper wants to. So there, we got a nice start on highlighting this white hair. Silver blue. Fitting for a celestial type wizard. Very magical. It's a very magical hair color. It's a unicorn hair color. That's what it is. So now I'll be kind of building, as we go down, I'll be building my color scheme kind of based off of what I've done up here for maximum contrast and still using the colors I want to do. We're just talking, I might go teal and purple with this color scheme. It'll be interesting to do the teal because teal and the silver blue are going to clash just a little bit. So if I bring the teal in, I'll have to make sure either I use it further down or I've got to spread it out and separate it from the hair a little bit, make sure I don't get a clashing color composition. But yeah. Oh. Yeah, sorry, Crow's like, fingers crossed. Surgery, I mean, I've been in surgery. I have not been the person waiting for me to come out of surgery. So I imagine that is very stressful. Yeah. Alrighty, so I made up for my lost time this morning. Sorry, computer issues this morning. So thanks everybody for hanging out. Yeah, I mean, just go with a blue-gray, or like I said, if I'd been working to make this a little more natural of a white, I probably would have mixed skin tone with blue and gone with it that way. But I'm very happy with how it looks. It does look very magical, so I'm up for that. She's a wizard. It should look magical, darn it. I hope you guys have a great day. Tomorrow is gonna be Centaur Day. Hey, our relatively new model where we were working on the Appaloosa pattern, remember? So we're going to continue working on the Appaloosa pattern tomorrow, probably also on highlighting the bay hair here on the horse parts. Maybe we will come and fill in some of the other horse parts as well. But it's, I it's definitely more massive than her. Like, if you look at the scaling, he's 54 millimeter. So he's like twice the breadth of a human, 28 millimeter. A human could definitely ride this centaur. It looks bigger on screen. Well, but yes, so here we are. I hope you guys had fun. We will be back doing hair patterns on the horse bits tomorrow. And I hope you had fun with the silver hair today. May you have an excellent start to your week. A less persnickety than my own start. And I'll see you guys later. Have a great one. Bye-bye.